Good afternoon, everyone. You guys know me. I'm Minister Rhonda. Welcome to our financial planning workshop. Coach Deb is going to be facilitating that this afternoon. I'm excited to be here with you seniors this afternoon, just kind of passing through. I promise you, you're in good hands. You're going to get a wealth of information on this afternoon. And so you should definitely leave out of here differently than what you came in. Amen. So I'm just going to open up in prayer, and I'm going to get out of the way, and then the next voice you hear will be Coach Deb. So, Father, we just thank you for allowing us to be here this afternoon, God. We thank you for all that you've done for us, keeping us all week long, God. We just thank you that our hearts and minds are open to receive what you have for us on this afternoon. God, we thank you that in advance that our lives will never be the same because of what we hear on today concerning our finances. We thank you, we bless you, and we honor you, and it's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Amen. Coach Deb, you got the mic.
Thank you, Minister Rhonda, and also AKA my bunkie, in case y'all don't know what that means. Minister Rhonda and I have been friends for a very, very long time. We are sisters in arms as well. We met in boot camp in 1985. God brought us back together. I got stationed here. She came home after boot camp, and God just brought us back. And I am grateful to be here today. Mama Linda got me crying first thing. So again, I am grateful to be here. A little bit about me. I joined the Marine Corps in 1985. I'm from a small town called Pritchard, Alabama. Most people know Mobile, but they don't know Pritchard, right? But that's where I'm originally from. Did you say? Okay. What high school? Okay, I went to Blunt. I went to Blunt High School, Mattie T. Blunt High School. Both of our high schools are still in existence. And so upon graduation from high school, I was supposed to play basketball for Tennessee State University, but that didn't happen after I asked my sister if she thought our parents could help me while in college. And she said, they don't have any money. And why I didn't ask my parents that question, I'm not sure. But I listened to her, and one of my friends said, I'm going to join the Air Force. So I said, okay, I'll join the Air Force too. And then that didn't happen. And then I signed up for the Air Force, and then I looked up, and the Army was recruiting me. Okay, I can do that. And my father was in the Army. He was drafted during the Korean War, at the tail end of the Korean War. And I said, okay, I can do that. And then the Navy, I'm vain. I didn't like their uniforms. So I decided the Navy wasn't for me. And then the Marine Corps called. And the Marine Corps said, you can play basketball. You can go to the Olympics. We have sports. You'll be a perfect fit for us. And I listened. I came home and I told my parents I changed my mind. I was going to join the Marine Corps. My father said, are you sure? And I said, I'm sure, Daddy. And then my mom said, we called her Medea. And Medea said, are you sure it's not going to be too hard for you? And I was like, no, I can do it. So the more they said it was going to be too hard for me, the more I wanted to prove to them that I could do it. Now, I'm the youngest of 10. Blended family of 10, right? And so I'm the baby and telling my daddy that I could do it. And so he was a soldier, and he was like, are you sure that you can be a Marine? So I get to, I'm gonna do this. I get to Montgomery, and I look around, and they said, all the women that are joining the Air Force come this way. And it was a big herd, right? And then they said, all of the women that are joining the Army come this way. And there was another big group. All the women that are coming to join the Navy, come with us. And I looked around. They said, all of the women that are joining the Marine Corps, it was 2 of us. We get on this big old bus, and we get to Paris Island with 5 other young men, and they started yelling when they got the young men off the bus, and I said, what have I done? And the rest is history. Because what I could not do, and a lot of times your legacy is some things that you're not sure that you could do, right? And what I could not do was go back home without a uniform. Because my daddy told me that it was going to be too hard. My mama warned me, are you sure that you can do this? And I said, no matter what they do to me, I'm not going back home without a uniform. So I stand before you today after serving for 20 years and 21 days, but who was counting other than me? God's got a sense of humor. He started having me serve for the Department of the Army. Anybody served in the Army? Anybody? Okay. The Army. You served in the Army? Okay. I say hua, right? So I now work for the Department of the Army because God's got a sense of humor. So I come out of the Marine Corps in 2005, and I met a soldier at basketball games, and she said, I work for this wonderful company on Fort Eustis. You should come. So I come by, and she's sitting behind the ID card desk, and she said the HR company is upstairs, the HR office. So I go up there, and I fill out an application. They call me, and I started working for the Army. So all the Marines I know called me a traitor. They said, how could you do that? I said, they pay me. And on this side of retirement, all green is good. I'm okay with that. And I'm still serving. So I take care of the hearts and minds of survivors, right? So I went all the way around to come to this. I supervise the office for Casualty Assistance Center for Joint Base Langley Eustis, and I take care of all of the survivors in this area of active duty, retired soldiers. We coordinate over 700 funerals a year in this area. Our office is the one that sends the teams out. We task them to come out and do the military funeral honors that you see in the community, right? So if it's Army, then you know that we're in the background. That's what we do. And so I have been doing a lot of things. I served in and out of uniform. And one of the things that just keeps coming back, because you know, often we're searching and trying to figure out what God's plan is for us. And I was trying to figure out what God's plan is for me. And always, I got questions concerning benefits and entitlements. I always got a money question. Somebody asked me about money and about resources. And then he put me in this position. And I do it every single day. And I see the importance of taking care of your estate. And when I start talking about estate, it's not just your money. It is your name as well. It is your legacy. What do you want to leave when you're not here anymore? What do you want them to say? What do you want them to know? What do you want them to do? Anybody have started their estate planning? Because sometimes we put it off. Estate planning. Have you started your estate planning? Have you come up with any of your things that you want to see happen? Because that's what we're going to talk about today, right? So if you haven't started that process, it's okay. Leisha did pass out a handout, and it's got some definitions in there, and it's going to have a checklist at the end. It's a place for you to take notes. If there's anything that I'm saying that you don't understand, please stop me and ask any questions that you may have, because I'll do my level best to answer them and before we move on, right? And if I can't answer them, I'll make sure that I bring that information back to Sister Alicia so she can get it to you if I'm unable to answer it today, because I want to make sure that I'm able to do that, right? So anybody have any questions for me before I get started? No? Okay. I have a question for you. I have a couple of questions for you before I get started. Who do you trust? Because this process, you got to trust somebody with this requirement for you. So we need to know who we trust before we need to know who we trust, right? So one of the questions, who do you trust to handle your health concerns, right? Who do you trust to take you to the doctor, to your doctor's appointments, pick up your prescriptions, schedule your appointments? Anybody figure that out yet? If you have, you're ahead of a lot of other people. Another question, at what age do you plan to stop driving? At what age do you plan to stop driving? She said, do we have to? You know, sometimes it's a good idea, and we have to take a self-inventory. Should I be on the road? Am I a danger to myself or anybody else? Can I really see at night? Should I be on the road at night? Right? So that's another question, you know, just be some of your homework, right? What would be your plan for transportation to get you to all the places that are important to you when you stop driving? Who do you trust to assist you in this area? Right? Will it be a family member? Will it be a friend? Will it be a transportation company? Will it be the church? You know, does the church have a van? Do they have a bus? You know, all the places that are important to you, your doctor's appointments. Who do you have on your list to do those things for you, right? And who do you trust to handle your financial affairs? That's one of the biggies, right? Who are you going to, who's going to pay your bills, right? Who are you going to add to your bank account, if anybody? Insurance documents, are they up to date? Because I deal with some survivors who they haven't updated, right? Their beneficiary was their spouse, and their spouse is deceased, and they did not go back and make updates. I had one recently. He got remarried, but he still had his parents as his beneficiary on his insurance documents. So what did his wife have to do? She had to prove that his parents were deceased. And if he never shared with her where they passed away, because you got to go to Vital Statistics to get the original documents. They don't want a copy, right? They want the original with the raised seal. So she had to do that. I don't know if you have those documents yourself, and you have put those things in a I love me binder, and it also shows that you love your family because they're able to get to those documents, right? And sometimes we think that it's just our death certificate, but it may be your parents, or it may be your in-laws. They may need those documents as well, depending on what you're trying to settle, right? So again, who do you trust to handle your financial affairs? Your will, and we're going to talk about trust today. Will it be a family member? Will it be a friend? Will it be a fiduciary? Will it be an attorney? Who will it be? The other question, who do you trust to handle your final arrangements, right? Or your homegoing celebration? Who will that be? Have you let them know where you would like to be buried? If you would like to be cremated? My ex-husband, I've been married twice. You know, I'm just going to be transparent. I'm in God's house, right? I'm a card-carrying member of the First and the Second Wives Club, right? So my first husband's mother called my oldest daughter, her granddaughter, and she asked, because her father is still the same man that I divorced, right? And so she is now asking our daughter if she is willing, because her father is not somebody that she trusts to do the right thing. When she first asked her, she was still in college. She's now 35, and she has a different mindset. So he has quite a few children. We only have one. But out of all of the children, she trusts our daughter to be the one to handle her final arrangements. She is making plans to change her beneficiary on her insurance to our daughter. She is asking her to, she wants to donate her body to science, which is sometimes unheard of in our community, but it does happen. I'm here to tell you it does. And so that is one of her wishes. And she told her this, so now she knows. And we've had that conversation because I too was a little concerned if she would be able to handle, when I first asked her, because she had lost her auntie and her dad's sister, and I was asking her certain questions, so I was concerned about her maturity at that time. And then I said, well, I'm going to write everything down for you. And if something happens to me, look for this binder. It will have everything you need to know. And she said, thank you, Mom. Please write it down. Right? So if you haven't taken the time to write it down, then I encourage you to do so. And put it somewhere where they can find it. Because that's the other thing. I have so many survivors that come into my office, they have no idea where anything is. They don't know where their insurance policies are. They don't know where they bank. They don't know who they owe. They don't know what's coming in, what was going out. They'll say, my husband took great care of me. And he did in life. But what did you do for her after your life ended? And she's in shambles, right? So we don't want that to happen because we got some great providers in the room, right? But when you're no longer able to do that physically, what did you put in place afterwards, right? So when you start to do estate planning, it can be overwhelming, and people often talk about fight or flight, right? But the other F that a lot of people don't talk about is freeze, because fear can freeze us. Being overwhelmed can freeze us. And then when we freeze, we do nothing. So we want to stay in action. We want to make progress every day. We want to put something in place every day, because the only way to truly eat an elephant is one bite at a time. So this may be your elephant, right? That we're going to eat one bite at a time today. Right? So estate planning, because some people, when they hear that term, they think it's for people with a whole lot of money. But there's different individuals who need this. And when you are, if you have anything to include the clothing on your back, you have an estate. I have family members who fight over service members' everything to include their clothing. And often they're fighting over their clothes because they smell like them. Whether that's a good or a bad thing, they want that too, right? And so you want to protect your assets from creditors, right? The creditors will come first if you don't have a plan in place. They will eat up your estate, and whatever is left, the family can have, right? So we want to minimize the T word, which is taxes, and probate expenses, because often that comes into play again. And so who needs one? Young single person needs one. A married couple with young children especially need a will, because it also says if something happens to us together, then, so if this is not for you, it may be for somebody in your family, right? A young couple with children, they can name who the children should go to if something happens to them. Remarried person with adult children, anybody got a married, divorced, remarried, and then you have a blended family from children from a previous relationship or marriage. If something happens to you, then the children believe that whatever belonged to my mama, it should come to me. Forget about her husband. And the husband's children may believe everything belonged to my daddy should belong to me. Forget about his wife, right? Anybody heard those stories? They get real ugly. And often they get ugly in my office, right? And then we have the responsibility to carry out the soldier's wishes, because often these documents that they have to fill out, it's a requirement, help us do that, right? So an older widow or widower provides for periods of disability and Medicaid planning and what they want to pass to their children. So that is another category as well. And often we don't think about, without a personal estate plan, what you could lose, right? Because ultimate control of what happens to your assets, if you don't have a plan, the state will make one for you. And the state's plan may be in direct contradiction with what you had in mind, right? Because they want to make sure not your legacy is taken care of, but whoever you owe outside first. They want to make sure that's taken care of. The ability to decide who will raise your minor children, we were talking about the younger couples, and that may be you for your children. The ability to make or influence your health care, we talked about that. The ability to protect and provide for your family members, and maybe to care for themselves. Because if you got a spouse that depends on your income, and then your income is cut, I have one that I'm helping. Her husband was probably bringing in about $8,000 a month between his military retirement, his VA disability, and his Social Security. Anybody know how much he should be getting after he passes away monthly? Not even half, right? So from the VA, she'll get about $1,700, $1,800. If her Social Security was greater than his, then she'll get $255. These are sometimes the conversations that are not being had. And so the monies that you are now receiving monthly are adjusted. And so if you have a 2-income household and it goes down to one that is not even half of the one that you had, it can be quite devastating. And if there's not any other monies, i.e. insurance policies or bank accounts or brokerage accounts, if there's nothing, then all that they are surviving off of is what's coming in monthly. I have one, she has a $1,300 car note. Anybody bought a car lately? You bought one? No? 2020, okay. Anybody bought one recently? I have a coworker that just bought one, $832. When the widow came in, she said, I don't know what I'm going to do with this car. It is $1,300 a month. That's a mortgage payment, right? I have someone else who came in, they have a $1,500 car note. Did you see a scooter? He said, did y'all see the scooters? Yeah. But often when they do these things, they're not thinking about what could possibly come in if something happens to me, right? And all of the responsibilities that would be left to your survivor financially. Right, so that's some of the things that we should definitely think about. Some people control assets if you're alive, but incapacitated. They want to put things in place with their estate plan. And some people want to control assets after death, because it is stated that even if you leave a legacy, if you don't leave instructions, if you don't have things in place, if you haven't taught your children or the next generation what they need to do with whatever you're leaving, right? 70% of generational wealth is lost in the second generation. What's not lost in the second generation, 90% of generational wealth is lost in a third generation, right? Anybody wonder why or how is that happening? What do you think? What do you think is going on? Why are they losing it? Because often they don't know how to do anything but spend. If you're just spending and you're not bringing anything in, guess what happens to the well? It dries up. Yes, ma'am. I've seen it dry up right before my eyes. And it's part of the reason why God said you've got to say something about what you see. And I've been seeing it for 18 years. One of my cases is $500,000. One. I'm working 3 right now. So I've seen $325,000 spent in less than 90 days. I've seen $80,000 spent in less than 2 weeks. What do you think they're buying? Who said cars? They are. Because at this point, a car can run you $80,000 or $90,000 or more. And they're willing to stroke the check for it. And in Virginia, stroke a check for that type of property and not be 100% VA disability, and you're going to get a what? A property tax bill every 6 months. In line with the value of what? The vehicle. So we've got to teach them. We've got to have the conversation, and sometimes we have to have the conversation with ourselves. Probate. Anybody heard that term before? Probate is a legal procedure. It identifies and gathers decedent's property. It pays all valid claims. It distributes the remainder to heirs. Did you hear that? Where your family go? They last in line, right? The downside of probate, it's expensive, it's time-consuming, and it is very invasive. They get all in your business, in the lack of a better description. Intestate, I gave you some terms. Testate, beneficiary designations, and property titling. They trump a will, I'm gonna talk about that, and a simplified estate settlement. So these terms are also in the guide that you were provided. So tools used in estate planning: a will, right? A trust, a form of ownership or operation of law. When we start talking about ownership and operation of law, often it's based off of the state in which you live in, how that is done, right? So I'm originally from Alabama. I normally say LA, and that's Lower Alabama because we're right there before you fall off into the Gulf. And so when my mother died, my father was still in the home, in the family home. So it passed to him with no problem. But then my brother asked my father, Dad, do you have a will? Do you have some things in place? And his response was, Deborah knows everything. What my brother didn't do was what? He didn't ask Deborah. I'm Deborah. Because when I tried to have the conversation with my dad after we lost my mom, Daddy, what would you like me to do? My daddy said, I don't want to talk about that. I'm not leaving no time soon. Anybody brushed your family members off? You stiff-armed your children because you don't want to talk about it? And so when we lost our mom in 2007, our dad in 2011, I had to figure it out from the state of Virginia. And because I live in the state of Virginia, I'm no longer a resident of the state of Alabama. So it was difficult. And the only sister I trust to have done anything on behalf of our family's estate, she had filed bankruptcy within the last 7 years. So guess what that did for her, for the state of Alabama? It disqualified her. So because it disqualified her, I'm good on spirits. I have a great sense of discernment. I said, send me 3 phone numbers in the phone book, 3 attorneys. I interviewed them over the phone. The first one that I interviewed over the phone to see how I could handle this, we started talking, and I told him what I wanted, and he said, where's your family property? And I said, it's in Pritchard. He said, we can't give properties away in that area at this time. Okay. He said, well, let me ask you, you said you're in Virginia. What made you leave Virginia? And I said, I joined the Marine Corps out of high school, and he said, Semper Fi. So for Marines, when you say Semper Fi, which Semper Fidelis is, Semper Fi is short for Semper Fidelis, it means always faithful. And that's our way of letting each other know that we're Marines as well. And he said, I would tell you what and I said Semper Fi back, and what he did from there was, and I've never laid eyes on this man, he said, I could take your money and work this case for you. But if you can get your other 9 siblings to sign off on the document, I know another attorney that would deed the property to you for $75. So when I approached my other siblings, one of my siblings, he said, which was from my mom's first marriage, he said, all of our names should be on the property. What do you think I said? Alicia said no. I said, in a nicer way, because that's what I was thinking, we don't all have good credit. What we're not going to do is lose our parents' property because of our bad decisions. And he had to think about it. You're right, sis. So it's not that I wanted to take everything from our family. I was trying to make sure that we didn't lose everything in the second generation, right? So after I got that process done, I just had this conversation with my nephew 2 days ago. I said, I should not be the only one in position to take care of this family. Who's going to help me? Because he's the 3rd generation. You guys have got to get yourself together. Because we're going to lose everything because of your poor decisions about what you see, because you want to have everything you think you see in a video. It's not realistic, right? So we have to have those conversations when the opportunity presents themselves. So again, a will is a legal document that disposes of assets that are not disposed of by any other means. It can create a trust to control assets for family members unable to do for themselves. It can nominate guardians for minor children. I think that is the biggest thing a will should do. Now, when it comes to a trust would bypass the probate process, because here in the state of Virginia, if you have a will and if the judge decides who you have listed as an executor is not fit to serve in that capacity, what do you think happens? They deny them. The state of Virginia would deny who you have listed as an executor. So some questions when you're trying to determine who that should be is, what is your current credit score? Because if you cannot handle your own business and your own credit, a judge will say, you can't handle your mama's business either. And we know better. And because we know better, we're going to let the law dictate how your assets are divided. And who do you believe? Yes, ma'am. Very good question. Is the home paid for? Because she's saying if you have an older child and their credit is not in the best standing, right? Will they lose the property? Is the property paid for? Okay. You have a great opportunity to pass it down. If the property is not paid for, then the lien holder has an option to call for the loan. Anybody heard that term before? When they call for it, they want all of it. They may or may not allow the beneficiary that you designate to receive the property unless they can do what? Pay it off, right? But if it's paid for, right, you can put them on the deed, you can put the house in a trust to make sure that it's passed to them, and you can leave instructions to that effect that you want the property to be whomever that child is, good or bad credit, right? Because it doesn't have a lien on it. Now, if it's got a lien on it, it changes the game tremendously. So, very good question. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Yes. Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. Do you trust him? Okay. I appreciate your honesty and your transparency. Because guess what happens when you transfer the house? He can go get another mortgage on it right now. Okay? And you'll be sitting there and people come walking around and looking and going in the mailbox and you're trying to figure out what's going on and your house is in foreclosure. Right? So I led with, do you trust him for a reason? And you have to be honest with yourself. And if you don't, it's okay. And I've told my children, look, I don't like how you're moving. I don't like how you're moving with your money. You're not getting ready to mess up mine. My oldest children always think they're the family manager. It's come with their birthright, I guess. I'm the baby, so, we got a different perspective on life. Ain't that right, Minister Ron? But I told my kids, I'm like, look, I don't like how you're moving. And if you don't get yourself together, in my lifetime, you're going to be listening to your niece. I'm sorry, not her niece, my niece, your cousin. Because at this point, she's a better family manager than you. Yes, ma'am. Yes. Mm-hmm. Correct. Right. Okay. But somehow or another, I made it clear with the mortgage company that only should I expire, that, then he would take over. But I understand that because I own the mortgage, he would have to continue the payments. That's correct. In order to keep the home. That's correct. And if he couldn't, then it would have to be sold because it's yes. Money that's on it. So that would not give him the same privilege to sell the house or do anything else because there's an outstanding mortgage. Is that correct? Possibly. Because did everybody hear what she said? Because you don't own the home, the bank still owns the home, that's that's very possible that they could call a loan. Some mortgage companies will allow them to continue to pay the mortgage, and they'll, settle up in the end. You said your son, right? Is he in a position to take over your mortgage if something happens to you?
Yeah, because my mortgage is cheaper than his.
Well, he's in a good position there, right? So yeah, he could work it out. Um, I'm not sure who your mortgage lender is. Some are more user-friendly than others. I'm just giving you the full scope and the possibility so you can make a decision. And then some of our children don't want to live in our homes. They don't even want them.
Last part of that question.
Yes, ma'am.
My mortgage company is with AB&B.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're called Brethren, but it's AB&B Credit Union
Mm-hmm.
who I got the mortgage through. So with having a mortgage through AB&B Credit Union, is that any different from any other kind of banking institution for a mortgage?
All of them are different. And that's a question that you can now ask. Right? What is your policy? And where can I find it on your website, or can you mail it to me? Right? If the primary lender is deceased, what happens to this property? What are your requirements? Will you allow a family member to take over? Will you call the loan? Because they have to write it. They have to tell you. We just don't ask.
When they added his name, they didn't say anything specific about.
Okay, is he on the mortgage too?
I guess because I refinanced.
When you refinance, is he on the mortgage?
Yes.
Okay, if he's on the mortgage, then you have a whole different ballgame. He's going to be responsible if something happens to the primary. Yep. Yep. So, hopefully I answered everybody's question. Inter Vivos is a living trust, and I've put that definition on here. Testamentary, revocable, avoids probate. Assets included, now we're talking about trust, included in the taxable estate. Assets may be withdrawn by the grantor. The grantor is the one who has the trust written. Irrevocable, it also avoids probate. Gift taxes may apply, so depending on how much you have in your estate, you want to read the tax code. So I did put in your notes that the 2024 annual gift tax is $18,000 for a single person, up to $1,000 from last year's limit adjusted annual for inflation. For married couples, the combined 2024 limit is $36,000. So those are anything over that, the gift tax kicks in, and they will have to pay taxes on. So you want to keep that mindful, be mindful of it. This is an example that they provided. If you're married and you have 2 children and 2 grandchildren, you and your spouse can give up to $36,000 to each of your children, their spouses, and the grandchildren in 2024 without having to file a gift tax return or pay any tax. This means you can give a total of $216,000 in tax-free gifts. Now that's, for some folks, that's for the rich, right? Not always for the regular. I ain't gonna say broke, we regular. We're regular folks. Some of us are rich because they sit among us too. They just don't talk about it, and it's okay too. But we don't always look at the tax implications when we start to leave things. And so we want to make sure that we take a look at the gift tax. When they start talking about it on the news, Mama Linda always talks about me in the news because I do a social media Facebook Live, normally on Wednesdays and Fridays, and she says she liked my reporting. So I try to keep you informed as to what is happening. Another tool used in estate planning is a form of ownership and operation of law. Anybody married? They still recognize spouses, right? and a form of ownership or operation of law supersedes a will. It passes to the surviving owner, if you have a spouse, included in the taxable estate. You can have a beneficiary designation. In most banking institutions, it's called a POD, payable on death. Now, if you have a beneficiary on your bank account, they don't have to be a joint account holder. What you must do is ask the bank for the form, because guess where it is not? It's not where you can find it. You got to ask them for it. I've been with Navy Federal over 30 years at this point, and I had to ask them for the form. It's not on their website. I know their website like the back of my hand. I've been a member since 1986, and I couldn't find it. I had to ask them for it. Oh, sure. Here it is. Well, why isn't it on your website? Everything else is, right? All the loans that I can acquire is up there. But if I want to add a beneficiary to my account, I got to ask for it. Now, if you have a POD, a payable on death beneficiary listed on your accounts, all they have to do is provide their ID and your death certificate. And they must release all the money in that account to them. You got to wait for a will. You don't have to do any of that. All they have to do is wait for a death certificate. And they must give them if you have a beneficiary. Everybody got beneficiaries on their account? If it's not on your account, now I didn't say a joint account holder, because if you don't trust them to be on there right now, don't put them on there. But you can add a beneficiary. So after you're no longer here, they can go in and do that, right? And then once you add it on your statements, it should show their name. So that's how you know for certain that the application that you submitted, they processed it, right? And that should be added in your instructions. Yes, ma'am, Minister Rhonda. So the beneficiary can be different than, say like you have a joint account. Yes. The beneficiary can be different than this person. That's correct. It can be. But the person that you're joint with has, yes. Absolutely, they have first dibs. And then they can come, if you put that 100% of what you have in there, it could be 50% of what your other spouse would get, or your joint account holder would receive. So sometimes it's a race to who goes to that account. A POD? Payable on death, yes. They know what it is, I promise you. They don't know that you know what it is. But it supersedes everything else. So beneficiary designation, it avoids probate, it supersedes a will, it applies to retirement plans, insurance, and trust, which are normally bank accounts. It's included in a taxable estate. Now, a power of attorney. Anybody got power of attorney already? Yes, ma'am. You have a question? Okay. You have a power of attorney? Okay. What happens to your power of attorney if you're no longer with us? It dies. You're correct, Sister Alicia. It dies with us. It is no longer valid. Anybody know why it's no longer valid? One, you've passed away. That's the first answer. And two, the next document that comes into play is what? A will or a trust. So your power of attorneys are only valid as long as you're with us, okay? Now, some people will like, I got a power of attorney. Okay, is the person that gave you that power of attorney still with us? They say no. I said, no, your power of attorney is no longer valid. And unfortunately, that's the first time they've heard that. So don't keep this information to yourself. Make sure you share it with somebody else, right? So now a lot of times these will kick in when a person is disabled. Some people, now I will caution you to be careful with a general power of attorney. I call those the lazy ones, right? The general power of attorney does what? Anybody know? It does everything you do. They can sign your name to a loan, for a car, for a house. A special tells them exactly what they can do and nothing else. I've dealt with soldiers before that while they were deployed, their spouses had general powers of attorney, and I used to work with the nonprofit Army Emergency Relief, and they stopped taking them because soldiers would start to see allotments for debt payments that they say they didn't authorize. And the spouses were coming in and getting loans that they had to pay out that they didn't know about. Right? So that's not just limited to service members. It can happen to anyone who decides to just give someone that they may or may not trust, right? We're back to that word. General power of attorney to act on their behalf. And then they start getting these bills and invoices in the mail, right? For credit cards, for loans, for vehicles that you had no idea that was in your name. Because often when people have identity theft, it's not always a stranger. Y'all know that, right? Often identity theft is done by somebody that know you very well. So sometimes you got to keep honest people honest and lock them out of your social, right? So again, a power of attorney, I would say think about it. If you need to do that, think about it now. And what exactly would you like someone to be able to do if you can't do it? And just write out a special one. Have an attorney draft a special one for you instead of a general, because general is just that. Advanced health directives, anybody have one in place? Because sometimes, like Riverside, they'll give you one, and you can fill it out and have it placed on file with them. And often it says exactly what you want to see happen, which, do not resuscitate is something that they ask. Do you have a living will? Do you have a durable power of attorney for your health care? That means that who do you trust to make health care decisions for you if you can't? Right? Because some of us, we want to make sure y'all take care of us. Navy Federal has a thing called 5 Wishes, and the state of Virginia does recognize it. And you can write everything down to the point where I want my lips to be moisturized, right? You can say what music you want played at your service. You can tell them exactly what color casket you want, where you want to be buried. If you're a veteran, like I'm a veteran, right? So I went ahead and pre-registered because I don't know if I want to go back to LA or if I want to stay here. So I just went ahead and registered at Albert G. Horton. Because that's the only veteran cemetery in this area. If you're married to a veteran, they can register, and their spouse can also be buried with them, right? They don't use up a lot of space, so they dig deep down, right? So they're gonna be stacked. So whoever passes away first will be there, and then the next person will be in the same plot with them. Right? The spouse will be in the same plot. So I went ahead and filled out the application, provided my DD-214, and they sent me back a letter. I put it in my I Love Me binder so my daughter will know, right? Because my siblings are getting older. My oldest sister is almost 80. She's 79. Did I say how? Alicia is recording me. I said her age out loud. But my oldest sister will be 79. Well, she is 79. She'll be 80 next year. So I don't know if she's going to outlive me or not, right? And she may not be able to travel. So that's some things I keep in consideration because all of my siblings are older than I am. We're all seniors now, right? That's what they say. I want all my discounts. So if y'all see me on Tuesdays and Thursdays, don't say nothing. I'm supposed to be there because I've had people look at me crazy. Why is she here on senior day? Because I'm a senior. I want all of them, right? So again, when you're thinking about estate planning, the death tax is one of those things. It includes the value of your assets, including in your estate, your surviving spouse, and others. I also gave you a checklist on some of the things that you can do to start this process. So some of the definitions that I have put on here, I also gave you an estate checklist in the back, right? And so, because this is your homework, I always wanted to be a teacher. I come from a family of educators, right? So it's all in my spirit. So can y'all tell? I want to be a teacher one day, right? I've been an adjunct professor, but it's in my bloodline. I come from a family of educators. But your estate planning checklist, it tells you to review your estate assets and your debts, right? So if you have any debts, you want to make sure that whoever is going to handle your estate, they are aware of those, right? And what you want them to do. Because if your name is the only one on them, on the debt, then you can tell them, with this personal loan, if it's not paid off, send them a letter, tell them I'm gone, and send them a copy of my death certificate, and God bless you. Okay. We're not paying that. You can tell them, right? Decide where you want your assets to go. If you want them to be passed down to your children, to your spouse, to your church, because some of us we are it, and our church is our family, right? Individuals, like when I talk about Army Emergency Relief, we have some soldiers that don't have family, and so their life insurance is actually made out to the nonprofit. Right? And some people don't realize that they can do that also with their church, because we don't want our church to go away. We want it to be here for the next generation. And so we leave some things in place. That is a possibility. Select a certified financial planner and or attorney that you know and you trust if you have to have some things drafted up, right? Or they may give you a free consultation, and that will be all you need to know to finish your paperwork, right? Decide what documents you need to put in place so your survivors will know where to look and what to look for. Choose a qualified executor for your will, your trustee for trust, and power of attorney agent, right? So what's that word again, that T word we've been talking about today? Who do we trust, right? So we want to determine who do we trust and who is the best person for the job. Because some people are just not. That's just not their anointing. They just don't handle business well. And it's not personal. I'm going to leave you something. I'm just not going to leave you everything and to be in control of everything. And it's okay to have that conversation. If you got minor children or if you have grandchildren in your care, because some grandparents are guardians for minors. We have a lot of that going on. Have y'all seen it? That the grandparents are raising the grandkids. It's a lot of that. And so if something happens to you, you find yourself being in that position, who would you ask to step in for you? Right? Draft or update your will if you have one. Draft medical directives and say if you need to make any changes to those, that you do those today. Draft a trust if needed. If you want to go a step above a will and do a trust, you can do that. And one thing that often people forget is to do maintenance and do checkups. So once we get all these documents in place, things change. Right? So if you have a loan today and you've paid it off and you didn't go back and update your estate plan, whoever is working on your estate plan won't know. Or if you switch bank accounts, and originally when you put in your documents, this is the bank account that I currently have, but you no longer bank with them, they need to know that too. Sometimes we need to remember all the banks we have because we have forgotten that we have certain accounts with other banks that we didn't close out, but we don't use as often. Some of us have retirement accounts out there that we haven't tapped into or haven't looked at or forgotten about. You want to make sure that you take the time to capture all of them, right? Any questions for me? Yes, ma'am. Mm-hmm. Very good question. Her question is, if you have back taxes and you owe a lot of them, will the IRS come in and attach those to your estate? Absolutely. No, they can't take your insurance policies because your insurance policy trumps a will or a trust unless you have the beneficiary of the insurance policy go into a trust, right? It's protected because your insurance policies are not a part of your estate. They belong to who? The beneficiary, right? So the beneficiary, whoever you have listed as the beneficiary, your insurance policies are not a part of your estate, right? Regardless of what anybody may have told you. Hmm. You can prepay your final expenses. You can write all of that up. You can have an account designated for that. But as soon as whoever your executor is, if they open an estate account, the IRS has first dibs. Any creditor has first dibs on an estate account. So if you have debt, and whoever your executor is, once they open the estate account, it's also in your notes. It shows the pecking order of who can tap into that account first. Your heirs are last for an estate account. Mm-hmm. That, okay, because a trust and a trust fund are different, right? And they have different rules. So your insurance policy, the beneficiary, if you establish a trust, your insurance policy, the beneficiary can be your trust. And then it has instructions there, right? But if you have a trust, if you have a fund or a bank account and you have named it a trust fund, right? They can attach to that. They can get money out of that. Yes, unless you have a legal document that's called a trust that establishes that and you have moved all of your assets into the trust before you die. You gotta, if you open a trust, you gotta move the assets into the trust. You can't just call it that and not take action. So if you have one and you have named it and you have made your estate the trust a beneficiary of your estate, then it is protected. Mm-hmm. Right. But if they have to open an estate account, which is different than a trust, an estate account, it can only be opened after somebody dies. A trust is created before a person passes away, not after, if that makes sense. Okay. I hope I answered your question. If not, we can talk later. Yes, ma'am. If I didn't answer your question, we can talk again. Okay. You're fine.
Did you talk about probate?
A little, I did.
And did you mention that depending on what state you're in,
Hmm.
determines, if it's a monetary amount? And the reason I'm saying
Yes, ma'am.
West Coast, of course, it's more expensive.
Yes.
And it, I mean, it's like, if I'm not mistaken, it was your property
Mm-hmm.
valued at $100,000 or more that you would need to go to like probate and all that if you didn't have a will. But in
Correct.
Virginia, I think, is it $50,000?
I don't quote me on the amount. I'm not sure. But you can have if you have a will, you're going to go to probate, regardless if it's a dollar amount or not. And you're absolutely correct. We did talk about probate, and we did talk about the states, because state laws are different. I talked about LA. I'm not from LA, not Cali. I'm from Lower Alabama. So, and I did talk about not being able to be an executor over my father. I was trying to open an estate because I didn't live there anymore. So each state does have different rules, right? But he didn't have a will, but I was trying to open an estate. But I found a workaround. There are different workarounds in the state of Virginia as well, not having to open an estate account. Now, some states will make you do that, right? My girlfriend's brother died, and the state of Georgia does not recognize a mother as a primary next of kin, which is the craziest thing I've ever heard in Georgia. So, and it was for his 401k. It was for, right? They didn't recognize, not the state, I'm sorry. The 401k did not recognize his mother. And he was divorced. They recognize a spouse. They recognize children, but they don't recognize a mother. And the law says, order of precedence, if you're not married, it is your eldest parent, and it goes down from there. But every state is different. And so in order to get the monies out of his 401k, she had to open an estate account. And the only person in the state of Georgia that was eligible to be the executor, unless she waived it, was his mother. We went full circle. And then they tried to make her go to get an attorney to do that. Now, all of these things you can do yourself, but they can be time-consuming, and they can be time-consuming. And if you don't know what you're doing, it can be costly, right? But it can be costly if you have an attorney. But we worked it out. We read the rules. We went to Savannah. We got the documents. We took them to the courthouse. She filed. Her mom became the executor. She had to open an estate account. Then they transferred the proceeds into the estate account. And why do you think they wanted so badly to have an estate account? Who's first in line on an estate account? Estate account. Your creditors. Whoever you owe. When you have an estate account, your creditors are the first in line to get their money. Possibly, yes.
California is more pro-person, but their legal system, they just gouge you.
I believe that.
It's unbelievable.
My auntie left Alabama. She moved to Compton 60, 70 years. She was living there before she passed. And my cousin is still fighting. And I think she passed away in like 2013, 2014. She's still fighting the state of California
And creditors,
for a bank account,
creditors
access.
woodwork. I mean, it was, my son's had a former husband that passed, and they had accounts. How do you check that? I mean, I guess the lawyer would have to check. But, I mean, they just gouge
Fees,
the fees
yes,
for a call,
yes.
a letter.
Yeah, when you have an attorney, they work off of your what is it called? Somebody help me out. Your retainer is the word I'm looking for. They work off of your retainer, and every call, every email, every phone conversation is billable. So that $5,000 that you put down for a retainer, don't call them every day. And if you got to call them, make sure you got all your questions. Because every time you call them, they're going to charge you. Because they have to show the court what work they did to satisfy deducting from your retainer. And they don't make up some stuff. Every letter, every phone call, every email, and now every text message is billable. So they are very creative. And most attorneys, they're what, $250 to $300 an hour or more? Depending on what state. California is probably much higher than that. They're probably double that. Yes, ma'am. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You won't need to put it in a trust. If you've already made pre-arrangements and you've already paid it, they should give you a certificate that indicates, or a receipt, that your services are paid in full. That's what you need to keep with your important documents. Well, they don't want your final arrangements portion anyway. Unless you got money left out there that you have designated for final arrangements, that's different. But if you have actually contracted with a funeral home or a funeral service and you have outlined everything, you've paid it in full, they give you a paid in full certificate, right? Then they have to execute. Now, if the funeral home goes out of business before you pass away, that's a whole different thing. Now, if you happen to see, if you made pre-arrangements and they go out of business, then you need to be in that line as their debtors, right? And you need your money back. So add me to that list of creditors that they now owe because I prepaid my services and they're now out of business. I want my money too. Now, it may take you a while to get it, but if anything goes back into that business or somebody buys that business, you're first in line to either for them to uphold what the previous funeral home arranged with you, or they have to pay your debt, right? You may have been. I'm not sure what they told you, and I'm not sure what you have, but maybe the wording is what's throwing me off, because a fund and an estate account and a trust are different documents, right? So these are different documents. So that's why I said, well, maybe we need to talk again offline, because I'm not sure, right? And I'm not an attorney, right? Did I say that up front? I'm a financial educator, right? And because I deal with certain things on a daily basis, I've just been led to share what I know, what I've seen, what I've experienced over the last 18 years, helping survivors navigate, especially in the state of Virginia. And I've also helped people that are in other states, because military is so fluid, right? We're from everywhere. Every corner of the world, we got somebody serving in uniform. It's amazing. Right? I even have to identify soldiers that speak different languages, because we have so many family members that we help, and sometimes there's a language barrier, because the soldier may speak English, but the family may speak Tagalog, which is from the Philippines, right? And so we're trying to communicate, and we can't. But I promise you, there's another Filipino soldier from the Philippines that speaks Tagalog that is serving. So we just have to find them. But again, I would double check whatever they have told you to be true. And if there's some loopholes, I need you to find them before you need to know, or whoever your executor is or your survivors that you're trying to leave things to, that is accurate. They need to spell it out. Every document written in the military is at an 8th grade level. It's supposed to be in layman's terms so everybody can understand. Don't be using certain words and I don't know what you're talking about. I'm just a little country girl from Pritchard, Alabama. Any other questions for me? Thank you guys so much. I appreciate you. I have always, always, always had a special place for my elders. My grandmother was my best friend. My grandmother was born in 1894. My mother was born in 1924. My daddy was born in 1932. And so I was the last one in the house. And my grandmother lived with us because we did not believe in putting our elders into a nursing home. We just didn't do that. That's not something. That's a legacy that we have stopped teaching, right? Because people will make jokes. I know which one of my kids will stuff me in a nursing home. If you talk to Deion Sanders, I got my favorites, and I know which one of them. Now, some people won't say it out loud, which one of their children are their favorites, but most of the time it's based on the fact that we know which one of them will put us in a nursing home and drive off. Do you know, Miss Marilyn? You better. I ain't say it. I didn't say it. Miss Marilyn said sometimes you're better off. Good gracious. Okay. But again, I have truly enjoyed being here with you today. I hope you got something from today's interaction. Thank you so much to Mama Hodges over here for inviting me and trusting me with this process. I truly love you. Thank you. Thank you for having me. I don't take this for granted. Every opportunity because you know, when you tell God to use you and he does, you can't be mad. And he has me in some of the strangest places. And I was like, God, why you got me talking about death for 18 years? Right? Because in our community, often talking about this is taboo. And he said, you got the gift for gab. You can do it. And you can present it in a way that it is digestible and it's not scary. Because forget what we heard. It's a requirement for all of us. Nobody is getting out of here alive. We all got to go, right? We just don't know when. So in the meantime, we got to prepare for it and take care of the ones that we say we love. And this is our last act of love, is to help ensure that they do right by us. Don't have us out here looking crazy. My girlfriend, she says she don't want anybody looking at her. Don't stand over me. I said, that don't apply to me. If you go first, I'm looking in your casket because I need to see if your makeup's straight. But again, thank you guys for inviting me here. I appreciate you. I love you. And if you got any questions, my email is on there. My phone number is 757-236-0418. My office number at Fort Eustis is 757-878-3917. I'll be glad to ask or answer any questions for you. Thank you so much for your time.
I just want to say that I